Hao Xian is a lazy good-for-nothing, living an ambitionless life, mostly because getting out of bed feels like a quest on its own. However, fate has other plans when he is suddenly teleported to another world, the fantasy realm of cultivation. Instead of embracing this second chance, Hao Xian continues his unmotivated ways. But the gods of reincarnation have a sense of humor. They task him with protecting the heavenly palace, which requires him to find the 12 martial arts peaks and increase their potential. The catch: if he fails, death is right behind him, ready to pounce. Armed with overpowered items, Hao Xian sets out on his mission, trying to cheat death. The story begins with Hao Xian, a useless guy who dreams of dying without accomplishing anything in his whole life, other than lazing around. Alas, his dream is short-lived when he unexpectedly crosses over to another world, a world of fantasy that anyone would envy. Apparently, it has already been 3 years since he respawned into this place, and he reveals there is a system set in place. Not only that, there are secrets and cheats as well. Everything a man needs to level up and become the strongest. However, Hao Xian has one thing he lacks severely: motivation. Being the good-for-nothing he was in his previous life, cultivating immortality just seems too tiring for him, and he's actively trying to avoid putting in the effort. I guess old habits die hard after all. Of course, he too is quite aware his laziness is not a solution. If he keeps on dragging the situation like this, he will surely be condemned by the heavens for wasting such a great opportunity. With this, he begins imagining the gods chasing after him with a chair, scolding his idleness. And so, fearing the worst, he decides to regain some of his motivation by doing 10 push-ups. That doesn't look like the proper technique to me, but whatever. Nevertheless, his weak shatters into 1,000,000 pieces before he can even complete one. Falling flat on his face, he immediately decides to accept his fate, claiming he has done his best. Giving up on the magnificent life he could have had, he bids farewell to his future potential. Just like he thought, a useless person's life should be equally useless. As such, he heads to a nearby field, where he spends his days staring at the clouds. But this is just the beginning of Hao Xian's troubles. Other than being extremely lazy, it turns out he has another flaw: the fear of death. That doesn't sound like a flaw, to be honest. All of a sudden, a message screen pops up in front of him and gives him a mission. What's more, there is a 100-day time limit, and if he fails to complete the mission, it will result in Hao Xian's direct elimination. Seeing this, Hao Xian is left in complete disarray. Realizing that failure is no longer an option, he begins taking action. Buffed with over 1,000,000 action points, he hastily begins his quest. Through the mountains and the plains, he traverses the entire continent, the whole time going on and on about how he will die. This sudden burst of motivation eventually leads him to a secret cave. As per him, the mission is to activate the crystal bead in front of him. But this just enrages him. I mean, he had to travel 3 months without rest, all just for a stupid ball. It'd be enough to tilt anyone, but hey, look at the bright side. At least he made it in time. Glad to not be dead, he makes his way to the bead and touches it, resulting in a bright beam of light emerging. This marks the end of his deadly quest. Consequently, another message screen pops open and introduces Hao Xian to the situation in the heavenly place. It is explained that the contemporary heavenly palace is in the era of the Jade Emperor, the era known as the Golden Age in history. At this time, 12 martial artists lead the people. As per legends, any one of the leaders could have taken out any other leader from any other period. But despite this, the palace was ultimately destroyed, and all the leaders were killed in battle. As the story goes, the mastermind behind this situation was a group of 9 mysterious figures that suddenly appeared from the west, a group called the Black Flare Organization. But that's just scratching the surface. As of now, Hao Xian is 700 years in the past, before the destruction of the Heavenly Palace. Your task is to enhance the potential of the 12 martial arts peaks, enable them to surpass themselves, and grow into the top by saving people 700 years later. The system orders him. Now that's what you call a tall order. No way is this useless guy going to do that. He could barely do a push-up. And to assist him with such an impossible-looking task, the system grants him a Great Sage card, a consumable that temporarily grants the user the peak strength of the Fighting Buddha. Finally, his new mission is unlocked. For now, his quest is to go to the Flower Fruit Mountain and find the Rookie Monkey King, and increase his potential to 30%. However, Hao Xian doesn't seem to be very keen on this mission, especially after seeing the godforsaken, terrifying appearance of the Monkey King. Out of nowhere, rage overwhelms him, and he begins beating down on the system screen. He questions why this is the rookie stage, when he clearly asked to go against a god-tier opponent. Not only that, but what's the point in making him travel the entire continent just to see a video? Wasn't that something he could have watched at home? Nevertheless, the screen just restores itself, and Hao Xian's anger eventually dies down. Luckily, the first mission had a 3-month deadline, so this task won't be much different, right? For a severe procrastinator like him, all good if there are no immediate problems. Alas, much to his horror, the deadline is only 3 days. Once again enraged, he flips out at the screen, questioning if it is targeting him specifically, before continuing his "I'm going to die" song and beginning his journey. Just like that, 3 days later, he reaches the outskirts of the Flower Fruit Mountain, where he is instantly cornered by a group of immortals, aka cultivators. Seeing this group, Hao Xian begins begging for mercy, claiming they should not resort to violence. On the other hand, one of the sect masters of the 3 major sects, Li Yuan, asks what a mortal is doing in the Monster Beast Mountain range. There, Hao Xian makes an excuse, claiming he came here in order to find some herbs, and asks for forgiveness. In his mind, he is totally screwed. The deadline is fast approaching, and the Monkey King is nowhere in sight. In addition, he has now encountered a group of cultivators, who don't really seem like good guys from the looks of it. Sensing he is better off leaving, Hao Xian tries to flee the situation, but Li Yuan has a better plan in mind. Why don't we drain the little guy's blood essence and refine it into a blood pill? He suggests. Hearing this, panic sets in, and Hao Xian loses his mind, questioning how the righteous sect could do such a thing. Wasn't there a rule prohibiting cultivators from harming any ordinary people? But that is just pure idealism. Hearing this, the cultivators begin chuckling like madmen. In the real world, the strong prey on the weak. That is the only rule of this cultivation world. And so, Hao Xian goes into fight or flight mode. He claims he still has a secret weapon up his sleeves and decides to deploy the Great Sage card. In this situation, he has no other choice, and he'll just have to figure out another way when he encounters the Monkey King. And so, he uses the card, resulting in a huge surge of endless power rushing into his body. An intense aura appears behind him, leaving even the cultivators baffled. However, just before the action begins, the card's power disperses. As he goes deeper and deeper into despair, the screen reveals that the card is activated successfully, and the sage will arrive in 10 minutes. Looks like Hao Xian isn't the only useless thing in this manga. Sensing the aura disappear, Li Yuan grabs Hao Xian by the collar, asking him what that aura is, but before he can begin beating the daylights out of him, someone calls out to Li Yuan from a distance. On top of a cliff, Hao Xian's target, the Monkey King's Sun Wukong, is seen staring down at the human, ready for a brawl. Sun Wukong, with a dangerous aura surrounding him, questions if these cultivators are the ones who have been hunting down his monkey descendants. Seeing a Demon King-level warrior behind him, Li Yuan wets his pants. As per him, killing a few subordinates shouldn't be enough to bring out the top dog. In the first place, he just came here to kill some time and have fun, but things have taken a turn for the worst. It's also too late for him to call the ancestors, and as a result, he is left with only one option: fight. Out of nowhere, he begins charging up his strongest attack, all the while ordering his troops to buy him some time until he is prepared. However, the others aren't as confident as their leader that they can win. In their eyes, there's no way Li Yuan will be able to take down a Demon King level threat, and the cultivators are left in complete disarray. Nevertheless, Li Yuan tries to talk some sense into them. Stop with the nonsense, he proclaims, revealing that as long as his technique can gather enough energy, even a Demon King will meet his end. But hearing this just makes Sun Wukong even more eager. Seeing how confident Li Yuan is, he decides to take a chill pill and wait. He even encourages him to give it his all, stating he can spare more time if Li Yuan needs it to complete his technique. With this, he leisurely lays on the ground, waiting for the opponent to be fully charged. Hearing his nonchalant attitude, the cultivators are left in the pits of despair, whereas, for Hao Xian, this is the best possible situation. If he can only buy 8 more minutes, his sage will finally arrive on the battlefield. Meanwhile, Li Yuan grows cockier by the second. With a sinister look on his face, he tells Sun Wukong to not break his promise. He wants to save face in front of his descendants. To him, there is no way he will fail, especially since he now has all the time in the world he needs. Well, that's what he thinks. And so, a mere 5 minutes later, the attack is finally done. Sensing the completion, Sun Wukong also decides to join in, bored out of his mind and raring to go at last. Facing the Monkey King is Li Yuan, who is now as arrogant as can be. He comments on how foolish this ape man is, just like the villains in novels. Hey, as the saying goes, it takes one to know one. In the air, Li Yuan reveals that he has used the immortal weapon bestowed upon him by his ancestors. Hearing this, his subordinates start to gossip, thinking this must be a divine weapon of the immortal realm. If so, even a demon king will be of no match against it. With this, Li Yuan prepares to launch his attack. See you in the next life, you foolish monkey. He shouts aloud as his blast hurls towards Sun Wukong at full speed. The pressure behind the blow is so strong that even Li Yuan's allies are sent flying back, but Sun Wukong remains still, unfazed by the pressure of the situation. With a shit-eating grin on his face, he takes the attack head-on, leading Li Yuan to think he has achieved victory. He claims he has turned the Monkey King into a pile of ashes and begins laughing manically in celebration. Alas, it's a bit early for him to celebrate. As the dust from the attack settles down, Sun Wukong is seen behind his attacker, without a single scratch on his body. What's more, he looks to be even bigger than before. And so, the Monkey King closes the distance. Watch closely. Let me show you what real power is, he exclaims as he moves in to punch Li Yuan into oblivion. Nevertheless, out of the kindness of his heart, he purposefully misses the human, instead leaving a huge, gaping hole in the mountain behind him, using just the wind from his fists. Showing a glimmer of his true strength is enough to break his opponent's willpower, and the cultivators can see what's coming to them. Even Li Yuan drops to the ground and begs for mercy, but it's not like Sun Wukong is going to give them any. With an intense aura surrounding him, he walks over to the humans. There, he notices a rather old fellow in the crowd, aka Hao Xian. Seeing him, Sun Wukong immediately begins showing hostility towards him. Of course, sensing the danger, Hao Xian claims he is not the cultivators, and inside his mind, he wonders why this Monkey King is paying attention to some lowly guy like him. However, as for Sun Wukong, he has a very comfortable feeling coming from Hao Xian. Consequently, he wants to strike this foe down and get it over with, but not wanting to dive here. Hao Xian uses his ultimate key, lying. He claims he is here to become an apprentice of the great Monkey King and asks to be his disciple. He mentions there have been stories about Sun Wukong's great deeds and wishes to be accepted as a disciple. In reality, this is all just an act to buy time. Slowly but surely, the sage cooldown begins coming to an end. On the other hand, Sun Wukong looks to be delighted that his foes are well known all around the globe. However, that is precisely why Hao Xian wishes to die. Sun Wukong refuses that humans are worthy enough to become his disciples and finally moves in for the kill. Luckily, just in the nick of time, the cooldown reaches the end. Out of nowhere, something crashes down onto the battlefield, and Hao Xian is nowhere to be seen. However, on a cliff top nearby, an armored man is seen ready for battle. They truly deserve to be the 12 peak bosses. Their strength is truly terrifying. This figure states, meanwhile, Sun Wukong is left with a cold sweat upon seeing this man. He senses a strong sense of familiarity and closeness with him, and wonders what on earth is going on. As immense power radiates from Hao Xian's body, the crowd is left in awe, whereas Sun Wukong looks at him with hostility, still curious as to why this being's aura feels so familiar. However, before he can figure out why this is, Hao Xian mysteriously disappears right in front of his eyes, instantly appearing right beside Li Yuan. With this, being the petty good-for-nothing he is, Hao Xian wants to get his revenge on Li Yuan for bullying him and begins beating up the old cultivator. Treating him like a toy, Hao Xian smashes him left, right, and center, even going as far as to spank him. There, he asks where the old-timer's arrogance from a moment earlier went. Of course, being completely defenseless in this situation, Li Yuan can do nothing but face the music of his actions and apologize repeatedly. That's why you don't bully the weak. They will transform and beat you up. All the while, Sun Wukong is watching the ordeal unfold with a baffled look on his face. Suddenly, the confusion painted on his face turns into an excited expression. This is getting interesting, he claims, and so, radiating a strong aura himself, he tells Hao Xian to stop wasting his time with that useless old human and instead, come play with him. The entire time, Sun Wukong's dragon familiar is itching to go and wreak havoc on the surroundings. Just then, before the two have any time to collide, a voice calls out to them. Hearing this, Sun Wukong and Hao Xian both quickly turn back to see who this person is, who has no idea of the situation. And what they find is a real immortal, a cultivator who has reached the peak, flying up in the air above them. Seeing one of his forefathers, Li Yuan immediately begins asking for mercy and pleads to the immortal to save him. On the other hand, he begins mocking Hao Xian and Sun Wukong as well. As per him, a true immortal has descended from the heavenly place, and now these monkeys will finally get their just deserts. Whoa, calling them monkeys is going a bit too far. But I guess they really are, so I'll let it slide. And the immortal backs this up. As arrogant as can be, the immortal questions why. Despite being in his presence, these beasts are not kneeling in front of him. But Sun Wukong couldn't really care less about this immortal or his status. To him, the heavenly palace is a mere joke, a place he will just destroy and conquer in the future, whenever he has some free time on hand. Excuse me, who is the arrogant one here? Consequently, he then unleashes a technique named Golden Light Binding Spell, sending a rope toward the immortal. On the flip side, the immortal seems to be completely unharmed. Ignorant fool. Is this your best? He chuckles. According to him, with his level of power, he can easily escape this technique's clutches, but much to his bewilderment, he is unable to do so. Of course, if at first you don't succeed, try again. And that is precisely what this poor immortal attempts to do. But, as it turns out, he is unable to, despite using all his strength. Realizing this, the immortal is left with shivers down his spine. Apparently, he's only been in seclusion for a few years. However, the monsters of the earthly lower realms have already become so strong. And so, while he is still restrained by the technique, Sun Wukong's dragon rushes at the immortal, wanting to end the battle as abruptly as it started. Meanwhile, the immortal's face is painted with fear and distress. In his mind, he just wanted to act all cool. But I guess not everything goes the way you want it. In an instant, the dragon swallows the immortal whole, leaving the poor guy from the heavenly palace to warn his subordinate to be cautious when trying to act cool. I guess even immortals can have a bad day, once in a while. Seeing all this transpire right in front of his eyes, Li Yuan craps his pants. A celestial deity from the heavenly palace gone in a second. Is that a bit too hasty? Wasn't he supposed to be like a final boss or something? Nevertheless, this is just the beginning of this ordeal. After consuming the immortal, Sun Wukong's dragon suddenly feels a surge of power. It is explained that Sun Wukong has finally broken through, whereas Li Yuan's fighting spirit is completely crushed, so much so he begins wondering if the immortal really just descended to act as XP points. Sure looks like it from my perspective. Regardless, the dragon transforms and evolves into the legendary 12-winged Dragon King. Not only that, it grows in size, becoming as huge as the entire Flower Fruit Mountain. Knowing it is now virtually untouchable by any normal means, the dragon begins celebrating its evolution and decides to finally take care of that stinky monkey, aka Hao Xian. However, while rejoicing, it seems like the dragon has forgotten something crucial. There is always a bigger fish in the sea. From the sky, out of nowhere, a huge pole comes flying down at the dragon and smashes it to the ground, ending the 12-winged Dragon King's life in an instant. This marks the death of the first ever Dragon King, who died at the tender age of 765. Seeing this, Sun Wukong, along with all of his descendants, is left utterly speechless. Not only is their Dragon King beaten, but they have now also lost their beloved mountain, bringing them to an important question. Where the heck are they supposed to sleep now? Better find a homeless shelter. On the other hand, Hao Xian is seen just laughing up in the sky, apologizing for his attack. As per him, this is the first time he's using the golden cudgel, and due to this, it's pretty tough controlling the size of his weapon. Witnessing the huge crater left behind by Hao Xian's strength, Sun Wukong loses hope in his abilities. He remarks how even he, who was able to swiftly defeat immortals, would not be able to withstand the impact of that stick if it were to strike him. Nonetheless, he ain't a coward, and offers Hao Xian a bare-handed fight, questioning what kind of a hero relies solely on his weapons. Bro thinks he can overpower our boy with brute force. No way that's happening though. Of course, Hao Xian isn't afraid of a monkey and is willing to do so. He asks what Sun Wukong wants to compete in, announcing he will let him choose. and accept any challenge head-on. But Sun Wukong isn't fazed by this bold talk. He claims Hao Xian is just relying on his weapon and tells him to stop pretending to be a badass. Hence, he decides to use his weakest attribute, speed, to defeat his foe. But all this does is make Hao Xian chuckle. As it turns out, he is currently the future version of this monkey god, and as a result, knows exactly what Sun Wukong is good at. Speed is Sun Wukong's greatest ability. Still, it's not like the monkey knows Hao Xian's secret, and he challenges Hao Xian, claiming the first one to retrieve a leaf of the supreme infinite lotus located at the Penglai Islands will be the victor, and Hao Xian gladly accepts. However, as soon as he issues the challenge, Sun Wukong then makes a break for it. At full speed, he begins dashing toward his destination, and even calls on his cloud, or for others, the famous flying Nimbus from Dragon Ball. Riding on his cloud, Sun Wukong flies into the sky, exclaiming, "I will take the lead." On the other hand, the humans are left speechless. As per Li Yuan, the Penglai Islands are like a million miles away. Also, why are the Chinese using the imperial system? Shouldn't it be kilometers? Well, not that it matters anyway. Regardless, Hao Xian isn't one to shy away from a battle, and he too begins, heading toward the infinite lotus. A few moments later, at the Penglai Islands, Sun Wukong is seen regretting his decision and crashes on the floor. From the looks of it, his Nimbus is a douchebag who always takes off without thinking about landing softly. And this is a daily occurrence, so much so that Sun Wukong is convinced the cloud does it on purpose. Still, left with bruises due to the fall's impact, he continues his mission and finds the lotus leaves. What's more, he notices that all 28 leaves are present here, meaning he has achieved victory against a superior foe. And so, in the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, Sun Wukong returns back to the Flower Fruit Mountain, where Hao Xian is already present, asking what took him so long. As per him, he has been here for quite some time now, but Sun Wukong claims he just had to deal with some unexpected circumstances. Apparently, he was afraid of falling again, and therefore decided it was best to just fly back on his own. Nevertheless, there is no point in Hao Xian showing off. I mean, is there really any point in coming back so early? When he doesn't have the lotus leaf, doesn't that mean he has failed? Hearing this, Hao Xian questions how his foe is sure he didn't get his hands on the leaf, and Sun Wukong reveals that he has brought back the entire flower, meaning there is no way on earth Hao Xian got there before him. With this, he presents the flower for all to see. Seeing this, the humans are left with their jaws on the floor, whereas the monkey descendants fawn over their great sage. Hearing the crowd sing his praises, Sun Wukong begins acting all cocky once more, but Hao Xian doesn't really care. At last, he admits that he didn't retrieve the lotus leaf after all, leading to Sun Wukong laughing in his face and telling him to accept defeat. But there is a reason for Hao Xian's actions. Apparently, he didn't realize his body was so fast. He claims that as soon as he sped up, he attracted the attention of the gods. Sensing danger, he hurriedly stopped just to be safe, and hence, no lotus leaf. Obviously, there is no chance anyone is going to buy this nonsense, and Sun Wukong begins mocking Hao Xian, calling him a braggart. In a condescending tone, he questions why Hao Xian didn't just claim to have the Jade Emperor's interest. He even challenges him once again, stating that if Hao Xian can demonstrate his abilities to be equal to his boasts, he will perform a handstand and eat crap on the spot. Even the monkey descendants are crying their eyes out. Despite this, Hao Xian is willing to take on the challenge. Despite all the mocking, he tells everyone to watch closely and don't blink. With this, he reaches light speed in a split second, leaving behind such strong winds that it creates a tornado. That's not all. Of course, the bystanders are left wetting their pants, but that's just the start. All of a sudden, the skies change colors, and ominous-looking eyes appear all around, as if they are watching Hao Xian's inhuman speed. Even Sun Wukong is left perplexed after witnessing such a sight. Eventually, Hao Xian comes to a halt, though he too is amazed at what he managed to accomplish. Looks like bro scared himself with his speed. In his mind, he's glad that there was deceptive concealment, but he knows it's probably not a good idea to use his speed so casually going forward. On the other hand, at that moment, Sun Wukong felt an emotion he had never experienced before in his life. Soon, he realizes that this feeling is called frustration, almost as if he is like a crying infant in front of his opponent. Still, Hao Xian has managed to partially achieve his goal and manages to increase Sun Wukong's potential by 5%, leaving him at 15% overall. Just like that, Sun Wukong is defeated. However, this is not the end for him. Rather, it is only the beginning. I lost, but I refuse to accept it, he announces. In his mind, there is no way Hao Xian was able to come out on top without the use of his luxurious items and equipment. An unfair victory in his eyes. But Hao Xian has a solution for that as well. He suggests to give all of his equipment to Sun Wukong. That way, he won't have any excuses left. Hearing this, the defeated look on the Monkey King's face disappears, and he agrees to battle under these conditions once more. However, just as the battle commences, he stops in his tracks. Wait, that's not right, he thinks. As a result, he decides to call it a day for now and begins to leave, ordering his subordinates to accompany him. Yeah, I would do the same. Probably not a good idea to fight someone who humiliated you just a second ago. But the descendants argue with their leader, claiming this is a golden opportunity to beat this foe. With the agreed-upon equipment change, there is no way this no-name would be able to come out on top. As per them, the Flower Fruit Mountain has been taken down, and it is up to the Monkey King to take revenge. If not, it will not be able to explain themselves to their ancestors and the next generation. Hearing their pleas and seeing how much trust they place in him, Sun Wukong is left with no other choice than to agree and tells Hao Xian to hand over the equipment so he can change. But seeing this erratic behavior, Hao Xian grows suspicious. Anyway, now that the fight has been decided, the bystanders maintain a distance and observe as the two powerhouses change equipment. Their Sun Wukong seems to be worried about something and mumbles to himself about changing quickly. If he doesn't, he'll be caught and the situation will take a turn for the worse. But little does he know that Hao Xian cannot be fooled so easily. All of a sudden, he begins laughing at Sun Wukong, who is left in rage after hearing his chuckles. Eyes red with rage, he begins chasing the laughing Hao Xian, but this proves to be his biggest mistake. Chasing after a speedster like Hao Xian, he accidentally reveals himself to the bystanders, who are left stumped and perplexed after seeing that their leader, the one considered to be the strongest, has cute tattoos. Even the humans are left stumped after witnessing such a thing, but all this does is make Sun Wukong even more furious. He questions what's so funny, asking why a demon king can't have cute tattoos. I mean, valid point I guess. Whatever floats your boat. Seeing him in such a state, his subordinates try to calm him down, but it has the inverse effect, and Sun Wukong takes to the ground, tears in his eyes. But the show must go on. Soon enough, the crybaby Monkey King regains his composure and steps onto the battlefield. And so, after acquiring Hao Xian's items, he begins powering up. There, he feels an amazing power inside of him and comes to the conclusion that it really was an equipment issue all this time. And so, now on supposedly equal terms, he moves in for the kill, but Hao Xian couldn't care less. Despite his enemy coming in full force, he acts all nonchalant and just dishes out a simple punch. A simple touch, strong enough to send shockwaves through the entire planet. Scratch that, the whole universe. In that instant of exchange, Sun Wukong undergoes intense pain. His life flashes before his eyes, almost as if he has lost everything. And that is the cold reality. As the dust settles, Sun Wukong is on the floor in utter disbelief. This rush of emotion leaves Sun Wukong baffled, and Hao Xian chimes in, revealing his attack was called Dao, the power of the realm. Hearing this, the Monkey King frantically questions how he can achieve this powerful realm as well, and Hao Xian explains that his martial arts are too fixated on perception, be it pursuing the strongest weapon or the eternal path to immortality. However, he has missed the most fundamental truth. Only by abandoning perception and embracing both reason and chaos can you cultivate true essence, the realm of the great Tao, he proclaims. Only once one can achieve such a state, martial arts cease to be mere techniques and become an art. But in reality, it is too much for the poor old monkey to wrap his head around. Is his Tao still incomplete after all this time? At that moment, he felt as though certain things within his heart collapsed completely. But like I said, this is only just the beginning. The night is darkest before the sunrise, and similarly, as his illusions break apart, he finds himself emerging toward a brand new door, a path he never imagined. With this, Hao Xian manages to complete his mission, and Sun Wukong's potential is increased to 30%. Thanks to this, Hao Xian unlocks a new Sage card, Neza. Thinking that the reward for each of his quests must be a great sage card, he begins crying tears of joy. After all, he's pretty much useless without one. Finally, my safety is assured, he thinks. On the other hand, seeing the display of raw power from him, Sun Wukong proclaims him as his benefactor and asks to be accepted as his disciple. So much so, in fact, that he bows in front of Hao Xian, who decides this is the best time for a prank. Obviously, taking on a disciple is not something he is against. However, if Sun Wukong wants to train under him, he must promise to uphold one condition. Hearing this, Sun Wukong enthusiastically replies that he's ready for whatever condition his master has. But little does he know that Hao Xian is in a mischievous mood. He orders Sun Wukong to never ever engage in cute or girly things again, leaving him with a baffled expression. He questions just what kind of requirement that is, but Hao Xian insists, stating he will accept him as a disciple if and only if he promises to never break this promise. And so, the choice is brought to Sun Wukong: either become a true macho man or become bizarrely effeminate. But this proves to be too much of a burden for Sun Wukong, who cracks under the pressure and announces he cannot do it, even though he knows that a strong guy like him shouldn't have such strange preferences, but just can't resist the temptation of cute stuff. What's more, he goes into a depressive state, which makes Hao Xian burst out laughing. All of a sudden, he hugs Sun Wukong and reveals he was just messing around. As long as there is no harm done to anyone, no one has any right to dictate what someone else likes or dislikes. Damn those guys who mock you, he exclaims, seemingly forgetting he was one of them just a few seconds ago. Not only that, as his master, he vows to protect Sun Wukong from any of these mockers going forward and beat them to a pulp. And so, with a new recruit under his belt, Hao Xian begins taking his leave, ordering Sun Wukong to keep up. But the others seem to be dissatisfied with all this. The monkey descendants, as well as the human cultivator, also want to become disciples of this fearsome man, but Hao Xian immediately shuts them down, explaining that more people will only increase his risk factor. Meanwhile, he thinks about something that's bothering him. In this fantasy world, the Monkey King's familiar. The dragon he struck down clearly looks to be a Western creature. Not to mention the magic formation is the same, but despite this, all the locals don't seem to find it strange at all, almost as if they are accustomed to it already. Wasn't the mysterious Western organization supposed to attack like 700 years in the future? Just what is going on? But before he can ponder over all the circumstances, the system screen pops up in front of him again. This time, he is given yet another mission: find the young Valkyrie in her fledgling stage and increase her potential value to 30%. Seeing this, Hao Xian comments on how all the 12 peaks have intimidating titles, but regardless, he has to do the system's bidding if he wants to live. On the other hand, later that night, in an unfamiliar place called the Daughter's Country, a humanoid demon is seen shackled with 1,000 chains inside of a mystical realm. No matter how much this demon tries to resist, the shackles refuse to free him. However, to him, this is all befitting for the ruler of a nation. In his eyes, the small sects and factions cannot stand toe to toe on the same level as his captor, who is revealed to be none other than the Queen of Daughter's Country, Queen Shi Liang. Shi Liang, sitting on her throne in this realm, reveals that it took 3 whole days to capture this demon king, telling him to stop the feudal resistance. According to her, even if he turns into a pile of bones, there is no way to escape, and once the 1,000 machine formation is completed, no one in the entire cultivation world can break it apart. That's how much confidence she has in herself. But the Demon King is unfazed by her threats. Of course, Shi Liang's title as the master of the continental formations is not an empty reputation. But what if the demon has already surpassed her? But what if I told you that I have already mastered the true power of realms? He questions. In the blink of an eye, a portal opens right beneath Shi Liang's feet, and she is sucked inside, despite all her efforts, and is teleported to a colorless realm. There, the Demon King reveals his true form. This is my power of realm, the power of domain, he announces. In this place is a divine being, the one who rules over everything. Suddenly, chains appear out of nowhere and restrain Shi Liang. Excuse me, but why is she turned on by this? Is that a masochist I see? Seeing her in such a helpless state, the Demon King begins to chuckle sinisterly, revealing that, from now onwards, the entire Daughter's Country belongs to him as his personal possession, and that includes the Queen. Back in the real world, 7 days later, Hao Xian and his new disciple reach the outskirts of the daughter's country. Now in his regular human form, he reverts back to his usual lazy self, complaining about how he really doesn't want to do this damn mission. Suddenly, Sun Wukong sneaks up behind him, hesitantly asking if his master's plan is really going to work. But Hao Xian just tells him to come out, revealing that Sun Wukong, the feared monkey king of the flower fruit mountain, has been reduced to a cute young appearance. Obviously, this is all too embarrassing for Sun Wukong, but Hao Xian claims this is all part of his training, and he will soon understand. Alas, this wasn't the real intention. As per Hao Xian, by having such a cute mascot around, the chance of getting attacked by dangerous enemies is at an all-time low. However, from a distance, a creepy old man is seen spying on them with a sinister smile on his face. Having spotted their next target, the old man, accompanied by a stern-looking companion, closes in on them. The old man comments on how these two look like unfamiliar faces, understanding they are likely travelers who have just arrived here. As such, he claims that after a long and tiring journey, they must be looking for accommodation, revealing he has some rather exciting programs to recharge their energy. Hearing these words, Hao Xian's mind goes into overload and he begins recalling the accommodations and exciting programs from his old world. In other words, he begins imagining engaging in illicit activities. However, it looks like he isn't a complete lost cause. His inner alpha chimes in, telling him not to bring his filthy thoughts from Earth to this pure land of cultivation. This is a completely different world, where such things are impossible. But the old man doesn't let up. Like the devil, he begins whispering in Hao Xian's ear, talking about how he has all the young and beautiful women of this country under his palm. Hearing this, something takes over Hao Xian's body, but he immediately regains his senses and tries to back out, announcing he is still underage. However, the old man's accomplice doesn't allow him to do so. There, the old man finally reveals what is going on. Apparently, his boss has already taken complete control of daughter's country and hence, all the beauties in the city are up for the taking. Such a bold claim obviously leaves Hao Xian a bit confused, but to prove himself, the old man pulls out a golden orb. Thanks to this, he is able to show Hao Xian and Sun Wukong that he isn't a liar, and images of beautifully well-endowed women in skimpy clothes begin projecting themselves. These women are all famous figures from the daughter's country, the exciting program he was talking about earlier. But rather than being overwhelmed with lust, Hao Xian is enraged. Nevertheless, the old man keeps talking. He reveals that if this isn't thrilling enough, he has even more exciting programs, so much so that he can adjust the intensity as per the customer's imagination, revealing they have already exploited the innocence of these women. Finally, Sun Wukong has heard and seen enough. Red with anger, he condemns these barbaric acts and punches the old man in the face, sending him crashing to the ground. Such a strong blow immediately strikes fear into the man's heart, and he asks what Sun Wukong is planning to do. And as if that wasn't quite obvious, Sun Wukong announces he's going to uphold justice. What a righteous guy. Just then, in the nick of time, Hao Xian tells his disciple to stop. With an idiotic look on his face, he apologizes for his disciple lashing out and flees the situation, driving Sun Wukong along with him. Seeing them run off, the stern companion asks the old man if it's really all right to let them go. But the old man couldn't care less. In his eyes, the person they are looking for couldn't possibly be so cowardly, and they just have to cut their losses and continue forward. On the other hand, after escaping the situation, Hao Xian notices that Sun Wukong is still pissed off, though he claims not to be. Nonetheless, Hao Xian explains the situation to his disciples. Supposing what the old man said about his leader, taking control of the country, is true, would such powerful and fearsome people really be trying to resort to sneaky tactics like soliciting customers on the street? To him, it makes no sense, and it feels like they are trying to spread information in a small area, waiting for someone to take their bait. Hearing this, Sun Wukong is dumbfounded. Such thoughts never even crossed his mind, and he is left speechless. Still, Hao Xian continues, stating that the daughter's country might just be a stepping stone for these evildoers, and they might have a bigger plan in mind. Regardless, Hao Xian has a sense of justice as well. No matter what, I must completely eliminate these scum, he announces, adding they can't go around picking fights and tipping off the enemy. Listening to Hao Xian's explanation, Sun Wukong immediately falls to his knees and expresses his sincere apology for doubting his master. He began thinking of his master as a timid and trouble-averse coward, even speculating that his strength from before was a mere fleeting illusion. Why are you apologizing? You hit the nail on the head. Despite sustaining damage from his apology, Hao Xian plays it off cool, nonchalantly asking how on earth he could be that kind of a person. I mean, he did instinctively run away in fear earlier, but still, he realized something was wrong at the end. Good enough for now, I guess. Anyway, Hao Xian decides not to waste any more time and sneaks into the city to catch their enemies off guard, and Sun Wukong seconds this decision, announcing he will follow his master's lead. Just then, someone calls out to them. As they turn behind, they find a woman filled with rage, condemning them both. She proclaims that their comrades have already been defeated and they don't have anywhere to run. Upon closer inspection, Hao Xian notices that the old man, as well as his companion, has been captured and turned into doll-like figures. But that's just the beginning. Suddenly, the system screen pops open yet again, revealing Hao Xian has finally found the target for his mission, sending him into a world of trouble as he thinks about what he should do in such a situation. But the woman, aka Neza, thinking Hao Xian and Sun Wukong are allies of these scumbags who treat women as playthings, moves in for the kill. Of course, Hao Xian, being the scaredy cat he is, tries to shy away from a fight, asking Neza to listen to his explanation before attacking. But Sun Wukong isn't nearly that afraid. Rather, he is a hot-blooded warrior. He announces that the time for explanation has already passed, and it is now time to take action. With this, he moves in to counter Neza, and the two begin to clash. Just when they are about to exchange blows, Neza speeds up and cuts Sun Wukong into a million pieces. However, this is all just an illusion. Immediately, she realizes that what she struck down was a mere clone, and turns back to face the real foe. Seeing this, even Sun Wukong is impressed at this woman's reactions, but it's already too late. The Monkey King manages to close the distance and delivers a strong blow, pummeling Neza deep into the ground. But despite taking one of the Monkey King's attacks head-on, she slowly starts getting back on her feet. Seeing this, he gets more and more excited, announcing that it's quite rare to see someone still able to move after taking one of his punches head-on. But as he stands idly, acting all arrogant and cocky, Neza manages to get back up on her feet and moves in for round 2. In the blink of an eye, she unleashes a devastating attack, causing Sun Wukong to vomit up blood. At that moment, he feels defeated, complementing Neza's insane speed, and down goes the Monkey King. Eventually, both fighters get back up again, ready to continue the battle. In the meantime, witnessing all of this from the sidelines, Hao Xian is left amazed at the strength of this woman. He never imagined there could be someone strong enough to subdue Sun Wukong in just 2 rounds, but he has to remain calm. Now isn't the time to use the Great Sage card, and hence he rushes over to his disciple, asking if he can handle the situation on his own, or if he should intervene. To this, Sun Wukong replies that his foe is incredibly strong. If he was the same as before, it would have been a rather indecisive outcome, but now, with his master's profound power of the realm, he will definitely come out on top. Hearing this, Hao Xian also loses his mind, questioning if this means his disciple has already mastered the power of the realms. And that's precisely what Sun Wukong meant. Of course, Hao Xian is still in utter disbelief and refuses to accept it, questioning how on earth this could be possible. Alas, reality is a cruel mistress. Even though he's not on the same level as Hao Xian, Sun Wukong claims he can exhibit his newly acquired power without a problem. "If you don't believe me, just watch and see," he exclaims. And so he begins powering up, talking about how his Tao was never completed until now. Understanding and embracing chaos is the only way to achieve this strength according to him. And his aura immediately starts to grow stronger. Sensing this peculiar aura, even Neza is taken aback, but the show is far from over. Sun Wukong continues increasing his power until he holds a powerful ball of energy in his hands. Seeing this, Hao Xian loses his mind. Despite his eyes confirming this to the power of the Great Tao, he still can't believe it. The fact is Sun Wukong only glanced at the ability a few days earlier, but has still managed to get a hold of the technique. This kid's comprehension is truly heaven-defying, he claims. Sure, it looks like it. Yes, he isn't one of the 12 peaks for nothing. On the other hand, faced with such ominous power, Neza is left with a cold sweat. To her, something feels off. Her opponent only has a small ball of light, yet it is enough to make her feel an unprecedented sensation, a pressure she has never felt before in her life. Consequently, she realizes that if she continues holding back, she will die and decides to go all out immediately. As a result, she too begins powering up and takes up a stance. In a moment, her aura becomes extremely powerful, and Hao Xian remarks on how, though the power is ordinary, the pressure of this woman is on par with the power of the realms. But Sun Wukong notices that the pressure is not her own, rather is radiating from the swords surrounding her. Apparently, each one of her swords is a legendary artifact. Thanks to this, he gets a rough idea of Neza's background, though he isn't all too happy. You see, Sun Wukong was desperately after a legendary artifact himself, but had no success despite searching for years on end. Still, in his mind, these artifacts stand no chance in front of his master's power. They aren't worth mentioning at all, he announces as he moves in to end things once and for all. Little does he know, his master is actually a big wuss. However, before round 3 commences, something goes wrong. All of a sudden, the power of Tao goes into a state of chaos, inflicting a heavy burden on Sun Wukong. Because of this, he is no longer able to control the power and collapses to the ground, criticizing his own weakness. Seeing his disciple fall over, Hao Xian hurriedly rushes over to his side, asking if he is alright. And as it turns out, Sun Wukong is completely fine. For the most part, that is. At the moment, he is no longer able to move his body, since the power of the Great Tao is too overwhelming for him to control. As such, he has been backlashed, but that isn't really that big of an issue. As per Hao Xian, if he keeps practicing, he will definitely master the power, and everything's fine, as long as he is okay. But the question is, are they really going to be okay? Neza, still raring to go, sneaks up behind the two, stating she never thought the disciples of the Demon King would possess such strength. I underestimated them, she proclaims as she looks down on the two, with eyes filled with rage. Hao Xian better use the card if he wants to live. Consequently, just like the useless, good-for-nothing he is, Hao Xian once again tries to de-escalate the situation, explaining that they aren't the subordinates of that Demon King. Seeing this, Sun Wukong condemns his master's actions, questioning why he is wasting words on her. In his situation, he should just beat the stuffing out of her. However, Hao Xian kicks him in the face, telling him to shut up. Ouch, that's gotta hurt. In his mind, he knows that the Great Sage card has a 10-minute cooldown, and with their main fighting force, aka Sun Wukong, out of commission, this is the best he can do. They first need to calm down Neza, and then act when the right opportunity for escape arises. As such, he continues his explanation, revealing they are actually good guys who were planning to rescue the people in the daughter's country as well. He claims both he and Neza have the same goal, but Neza is completely unconvinced. If what he is saying is the truth, then she demands to see some evidence of it. Alas, Hao Xian doesn't have anything like that handy. Still, only using his words, he manages to calm her down a bit. He claims that a noble and gallant heroine like Neza would never engage in baseless accusations. Buttering her up like a piece of toast, he begins singing her praises, stating that someone like her, who cares deeply for her people, wouldn't indiscriminately kill innocent people, and his sophistry slowly starts to work. Although a bit confused, she agrees with Hao Xian, announcing she would rather spare 1,000 lives than take one wrongfully. Nevertheless, Hao Xian doesn't have any evidence of his innocence, so it's not really a good idea to trust him. Pretty valid point if you ask me. Just then, he gets an ingenious idea, suggesting they accompany her into the city, and she can just get rid of them if she senses something is fishy. Eventually, Neza ends up agreeing with this idea. I mean, she's cute and all. But how could she be so much of an airhead? Well, you are cute, so you are forgiven. And so, she immediately starts leading them into the nation's walls, and Hao Xian follows her, dragging Sun Wukong with him. On the way, she warns Hao Xian to maintain some distance from her, seeing as how she isn't used to being so close to others. But he, not thinking much, tries to overextend. He claims they are already comrades, placing his hand on her shoulder in an attempt to build trust. Not a good idea if you ask me, and just as expected, this results in her launching a strong attack, ordering him to move your hand away from me. Seeing the crater left behind by this attack, Hao Xian finally understands his place and takes a few steps back. Anyway, they continue their journey, and on the way, Sun Wukong connects some dots. Seeing her aloof demeanor and all the artifacts she has in her possession, he concludes that Neza must be the daughter of the sword demon Lin Huan, one of the peak figures in the contemporary Heavenly Palace rankings. Along with this, Lin Huang is also a member of a mysterious organization known as Shijia. Of course, this piques Hao Xian's curiosity, but even Sun Wukong doesn't know anything more. However, this doesn't make sense to Hao Xian. From what he could see, someone of Neza's level should have already been familiar with the power of the realms, but it was evident it was her first time seeing it while fighting Sun Wukong. As a result, he tries to get some answers and announces that maintaining distance is not a good idea. If they are going to be fighting together, they should discuss some plans and strategies, but it looks like he is severely mistaken. Neza never planned on fighting together in the first place, claiming, "I'll handle my own battle on my own. I don't need others interfering." Hearing this, Sun Wukong begins fuming, asking why she's acting so high and mighty at her age. But Neza isn't so conceited. She too knows her chances of victory are not assured. In case she loses and dies, Hao Xian and Sun Wukong will have to take charge, but before that, she doesn't want their help. At that moment, seeing her figure walking in front of him, Hao Xian feels an indescribable sense of loneliness. Nevertheless, they eventually reach the kingdom's gates. Before going in, Neza once again reminds them not to butt into her matters, and Hao Xian agrees to do so, glad that he will just be an observer and stay safe. However, as soon as they enter, they are faced again with a giant beast, one on par with the Demon King. Seeing this, Hao Xian immediately gives up on staying safe and begins thinking of a plan. Of course, Neza doesn't really care and dashes at the foe, and despite Hao Xian's warning, she goes head into an incoming attack. However, much to the beast's surprise, she emerges from the attack unharmed and attacks the beast, piercing its body repeatedly and leaving huge wounds. Seeing her display, Hao Xian is mesmerized, but he doesn't have the luxury of admiring Neza for long. Out of nowhere, the Demon King from before arrives on the scene, sad that his most beloved pet has been defeated in a split second. In addition, he compliments Neza, telling her she is truly worthy of being the bloodline of the Sword Demon. Apparently, the Sword Demon and this Demon King have a long, deep-seated blood feud with each other, and because of this, the demon has decided to target the Sword Demon's young one instead. Suddenly, he unleashes the power of the realm and begins powering up, ready to blow up all of his victims into smithereens. Seeing this power, everyone is left taken aback after realizing this power to be of the realm. "In this realm, I am an absolute, invincible existence," he announces, revealing that a mere movement of his finger could easily take the life of his opponent. Suddenly, Neza is constrained by his power, and the Demon King continues, stating that her bravery, the badly wounded Monkey King, and a mere mortal won't be enough to save her. However, Neza never needed anybody's help to begin with. Once again, she deploys her strongest technique, summoning her countless legendary artifacts. These artifacts give her a surge of power, and she breaks free from her shackles. Seeing this, even the Demon King is left distraught. He wonders how on earth this could be, especially since they are in his domain. But Neza replies that there is no such thing as absolute invincibility in this world. It's a matter of having enough strength, and her sword formation is enough to contend with him. Moreover, she proclaims that the Demon King's power is still lacking in comparison to Sun Wukong's. Of course, this makes the Monkey King all cocky, and he questions how the Demon King's power could match that of his master, though Hao Xian isn't too thrilled about this, because he is worried the Demon King might turn their gang towards them. Regardless, the battle is far from over. The Demon King powers up his technique, Skeleton Sea, sending a wave of skulls toward Neza, but she remains unfazed. In her eyes, quantity means nothing if they are all weak. Consequently, she too powers up, and the two powerhouses clash. As the techniques collide, it sends a huge shockwave throughout the kingdom. Witnessing this, even Hao Xian is taken aback and asks if Sun Wukong has recovered yet. However, he is still rendered unable to move, forcing Hao Xian to use the ace up his sleeve. As a result, he uses his Great Sage card, and the system reveals the cooldown has been activated. But much to his surprise, the cooldown this time is only 5 minutes. Seeing this, Hao Xian realizes that the system evolves every time he completes a mission, making him happy. Back on the battlefield, despite her efforts, Neza is unable to stop her foe's technique completely, resulting in several skulls coming directly at her. Because of this, she gets preoccupied with dealing with them, giving the Demon King enough time to send out yet another huge attack her way. Alas, even this isn't enough for Neza to cower away, and she prepares to counter. All of a sudden, a gigantic sword emerges from the sky. Seeing that everyone is left speechless, Hao Xian remarks on how the size of her sword is on par with his golden cudgel, but this is only to be expected. After all, her entire arsenal consists only of divine artifacts. Nonetheless, she launches her 1,000-wood phoenix at the Demon King, causing a huge explosion. The attack is so strong, in fact, that the Demon King is unable to bear the force and gets pummeled into the ground in an instant. As the dust from the battle settles down, Neza is the only one standing, but the Demon King refuses to accept this outcome. Damn, it's not over yet, he mumbles, trying to get back on his feet. But he is clearly wrong. The battle is already over, and Neza has come out as the victor. She orders him to look up and gaze into her eyes, and when he does so, he is teleported into another dimension. There, he is captured and shackled, with no power to defend himself. On the other hand, Neza looks down on him from her skull throne, announcing, "If we're talking about the so-called absolute domain, perhaps my illusion arts are more fitting. In this place, every breath a Demon King takes is equivalent to a day in the outside world. As such, he will have to endure hundreds of times the mental pressure. And in just 10 breaths, the Demon King is defeated, almost as if the life has been sucked out of him." Witnessing all this, Hao Xian is still unable to believe what's happened. He questions why it looks like the enemy has suddenly lost his fighting spirit, and Sun Wukong reveals that this is the rumored bloodline's secret technique. According to him, it is said to be an abnormal ability, possessed only by a few top-tier clans. That's right, those eyes of hers are definitely it. Meanwhile, Neza orders the Demon King to admit defeat, stating his current condition is no longer capable of being her opponent. And even to him, it is evident. As the Sword Demon's daughter, he knew he wouldn't be a match for her. But despite knowing that, he chose to attack. Suddenly, he questions if she ever wondered why he specifically chose to attack her in the daughter's country. This question leaves Neza distressed, but the Demon King continues, announcing, "It's because of the formation. You idiot." Out of nowhere, he gets an insane amount of energy and unleashes it into the surroundings. Suddenly, a magic circle appears beneath the entire country, creating a terrifying amount of pressure, so much so that it forces Neza to collapse to the ground. Despite her resistance, she is forced on all fours, and the Demon King rises up once more. There, he reveals that the daughter's kingdom was merely bait from the very start. Every action he took was in order to trap Neza within the country's ultimate formation. Because of this, the power of the entire nation's formation is now suppressing only one person. And even as a descendant of the Sword Demon, she has no way of countering such pressure. Alas, even this is not enough to make Neza back down. Using all her might, she slowly but surely starts getting back on her feet. "You are underestimating me," she proclaims as she uses her exterior manifestation, Thousand-Handed Sword Emperor. Thanks to this, she begins floating in the air and looks down on the Demon King. Meanwhile, both Hao Xian and Sun Wukong are left with their jaws on the floor. Neither of them has ever seen such a technique before in their life, but the Demon King looks to be unfazed. Seeing his expression, Neza comments on how he looks rather calm, asking if he really thinks he can face her ultimate manifestation. However, even for someone of his caliber, it's impossible. The Demon King claims that he, a mere individual, cannot possibly stand a chance against the trump card given by the Sword Demon. But if this is really true, how can he remain so composed in the face of certain death? Just then, the Demon King reveals his composure comes from careful preparation. The truth is, he was waiting all this time for her to unveil her trump card. Hearing these words, Neza is caught off guard, whereas the Demon King powers up for the last time, wanting to end things once and for all. Seeing this, the confidence in Neza's face is diminished and her face is painted with panic. Suddenly, the ring she's wearing starts to glow, and in a split second, beams emerge from her chest. Witnessing this, both Hao Xian and Sun Wukong are left shell-shocked. On the other hand, the Demon King begins to chuckle maniacally. It worked. It worked indeed, he insists, announcing that he had already long discovered the weakness of her trump card. He explains this to be the original body of the host. Once the manifestation takes form, any damage inflicted on the original host body will cause it to collapse, and the technique will end up backfiring. Of course, with such a strong manifestation protecting her, she doesn't need to fear any attacks coming at her. However, what if the attack comes from within? Slowly, the manifestation begins to dissipate, and Hao Xian realizes what's going on. He notes that the old man, along with his companion from before, is the cause. Neza had stored them inside her storage ring, and that was the trap the Demon King laid out. Meanwhile, the Demon King reveals that his reverse devouring technique, in addition to the nation's formation, is suppressing all of Neza's power, and as of now, she is even worse than an ordinary person. With this, he begins to attack Neza, punching her repeatedly. He mocks Neza's kind-hearted personality, claiming he knows she likes to turn people into dolls and punish them instead of killing them. You don't even dare to kill and still consider yourself a descendant of the sword demon, a worthless being, he announces as he pummels her into the ground. In the blink of an eye, she is left unable to even defend herself. Still, he doesn't let up, attacking her non-stop. He asks if she is in pain and if she regrets confronting him. As per him, this is exactly the emotion others faced when fighting her father, claiming that if she doesn't call for help, she might really bite the dust this time. But despite her condition, Neza's resolve remains unbroken. All her injuries and wounds have no effect on her. She simply deems her opponent's skills as inferior, telling him to make his move already. Whatever you say, Neza sure is pretty cool. Mr. Author, don't let her die like this. Please. Her words only trigger the Demon King even more, and he grabs her by the throat, claiming this isn't as easy as she says. First, he wants to torture her slowly, just like her father used to do, but even more cruelly. However, seeing no reaction on Neza's face, he grows increasingly enraged, telling her to stop pretending to be indifferent and feel fear. With this, he begins to cripple her legs as an appetizer before the main course. However, just before he lands his blow, he somehow misses the target completely, leaving behind a huge crater in the ground. Seeing this, he grows frustrated and questions who is responsible for this. Up in the sky, he spots a figure, carrying Neza in her arms. This figure slowly glides down to the ground, impressed that Neza didn't even ask for help when she knew her life was going to end. On the flip side, Neza is left perplexed. She notices that the woman who is carrying her has the same aura as Hao Xian and begins squirming around. You might remember she doesn't like getting touched. Of course, Hao Xian tells her to calm down, or they might end up falling. Meanwhile, the Demon King also recognizes this as an impressive feat, claiming the woman is no ordinary person. But if this is the case, why couldn't he feel any aura from her earlier? What's more, because of his current condition, there is no way for him to figure out her secrets, and consequently, he decides that the best way to deal with everything is to use all of his power in a single attack, to swiftly end the battle. One strike to end your life. Prepare to die together with me, he announces as he rushes in and launches the ultimate attack. Sensing the incoming attack, Neza recognizes this to be the power of the realm and tells Hao Xian to forget about her and run. But Hao Xian is unfazed. A contest of realms. Huh, then let me show you, he exclaims, unleashing his manifestation of the Great Tao. Feeling the sheer intensity of this power, even the Demon King is paralyzed with fear and falls to the ground. He tries to muster up the courage to say something, but is rendered speechless. In response, Hao Xian comes over to him. With an enraged expression, he tells him to say something, but despite his mouth being open, the Demon King cannot utter a single word. Apparently, in his previous life, the Demon King used to be a powerful carnivorous eel in an unknown pond. Whenever the other fish in the pond saw him, they were forced to flee or become the eel's food. His reign in the pond was supreme, and even if another creature from outside invaded his pond, it stood no chance against this fearsome eel. In front of him, it couldn't escape the same fate that befell the lowly fishes. Slowly but surely, the existence of this eel became taboo to even discuss. Among the other fish, and the eel itself started living at the top of the food chain. This made him believe that it was the true ruler of this world, the strongest, but that all ended one day when a powerful hurricane swept through. The entire pond, along with all its inhabitants, was lifted into the clouds. That was the first time the eel saw the world in all its glory and the true rulers of the ocean. As it fell toward its inevitable doom, the eel's mouth remained open, as it stayed completely silent, until it was devoured by the true kings of the ocean. And similar to that time, despite being different, the Demon King still recalls that same insignificance and despair from his past life. Along with it, he felt the shameful arrogance he displayed.